I'm Janessa, 26 years old. I've been married to Steve, a year older than me, for 2 years. Steve works for the government, while I work part-time and am financially dependent on him. Our debts are limited to student loans and a car loan. From the start of our marriage, we wanted kids, but it always seemed financially challenging. With our student loans soon to be paid off, we started to think maybe we could afford it. One day, our home phone rang, and Steve answered. It seemed like it was my mother-in-law on the other end. I was doing house chores at that time and couldn't catch the entire conversation, but they seemed deeply engrossed in their chat. About 30 minutes later, Steve hung up, saying he'd discuss it with me. "What's up? Anything wrong with mother-in-law?" She said that Stella's wedding date is set. Stella is my sister-in-law. We get along pretty well, emailing occasionally. I had heard about her boyfriend, so learning about their upcoming wedding was heartwarming. "Oh, really? Finally! When is it?" For some reason, Steve didn't seem as thrilled. "Well, about the wedding? Did something happen to Stella? My mom wants to contribute to the wedding expenses and is asking to borrow $10,000 from us." "Wait, what? Why us? We're not in a position to lend that amount." She mentioned that Stella's fiancé intends to pay for everything without any help from his parents. But mother-in-law wasn't too pleased about that and wants to help out financially. Why would she borrow money from us when they're trying to handle it themselves? In fact, we received $7,000 from them for our wedding. Though we intended to repay it, after an intoxicated relative of Steve's dad caused chaos at our wedding reception, we considered it compensation for the ruined event. We shouldn't lend the money without discussing it first. Recalling our wedding, I remembered feeling upset with my in-laws, especially my mother-in-law, who made comments about my parents not chipping in. With a troubled look, Steve tried to persuade me. We do have savings over $10,000, but it's in a fixed deposit, and it's cheaper to borrow than break the deposit. It's a perspective we both share. Mother-in-law suggested that since Steve's a government employee, he could get a low-interest loan. She promises to repay us as soon as they receive the wedding gifts. But I just don't feel good about getting into debt, especially for this reason. Why should we borrow money to help mother-in-law show off? Moreover, it's surprising to know they're strapped for cash. Steve's dad runs his own business, and though mother-in-law works, I'm not sure about her job status. My sister-in-law has a full-time job. Each time we visit them, mother-in-law brags about her overseas trips, designer outfits, and luxury brands like Chanel and Louis Vuitton. She seems to be living beyond her means, which annoys me. Moreover, Steve mentioned mother-in-law intends to keep this loan a secret from Stella. If you're dead set on this, at least be transparent with your dad and Stella. I don't want to be part of any secret. Well, I understand my mom's desire to look good. Let's just stay silent on this, okay? Janessa, don't you think you're being a bit too cautious? What? You're saying I'm being narrow-minded? No matter how much she promises to pay back, it's still a significant amount of money. We need to think about this. I was starting to get irritated by my husband's careless remarks. It's not that I dislike Stella. Stella's genuinely a sweet girl. She even stood up for us when that drunk uncle caused the scene at our wedding. I was planning to give her a regular wedding gift. The last time we met, she happily mentioned, "With the wedding reception expenses saved up, we can even go on a honeymoon." The $10,000 seems more for my mother-in-law than for Stella, and that doesn't sit right with me. I get that my husband earns his money, but we kept discussing this for days. He thinks since we won't technically lose out, why not lend it? But I can't stand my mother-in-law's casual attitude about borrowing money. Our talks never end well, and we risk slipping into arguments. This is the first time since our marriage that our views diverged this much. What really irks me about my husband is that if we do lend the money, he needs to explain the situation to his father and sister. But he's clearly reluctant because he knows his mom will hassle him about keeping it a secret. She helped us out during our time, so what's the big deal about lending for a short period? For our wedding, my side and his side split the expenses. I used my savings and the cash gifts we received. His parents covered his portion and later gave them the cash gifts they received from his side. That difference came to about $7,000. It's not about being stingy. That's a burden Steve took on. How does this concern me? He either had no comeback or simply didn't want to argue any further. He went silent. We didn't conclude, and in the days that followed, he kept receiving calls and emails from his mother. Lately, he's been ignoring her calls. "I'm just tired of her constant nagging about money," he'd say, frowning. The more I see him like this, the more I feel it might be worth the $10,000 to cut ties with his family. Finally, on a day off, he decided to visit his parents and sort things out. I doubted he'd refuse, so I said, "If you do lend it, make sure to get a written agreement from her." He came back later that day, looking drained. I got him to sit up and asked how it went. Apparently, while this was my mother-in-law's idea, his dad was on board too. They feel obligated as parents to contribute to the wedding, but they genuinely don't have the money. So they see borrowing from him as a temporary solution, thinking there's no need to tell their daughter. "Why are you so fixated on this?" they'd ask, emphasizing they don't want their daughter's fiancé to find out. They fear it would tarnish their reputation, which makes me wonder what they think of us. Then, my sister-in-law had told me earlier she had saved up money, but it looks like expenses for the venue decorations, attire, and production costs were more than she'd anticipated. Apparently, she's running short. So, she seems to be telling my mother-in-law that she'll pay her back with the wedding gift money and is asking for a loan. I doubt Stella ever imagined her parents would be asking us for money. According to mother-in-law, the amount they're short by is exactly what they were thinking of borrowing from us, about $10,000. Also, it seems there's been some friction between my sister-in-law and her fiancé over the wedding and reception, but it's unclear what the exact issues are. Should we just lend them the money secretly? You know how stubborn Janessa is, right? Wait, I told you I'm not okay with that. Did you not mention my conditions to mother-in-law and the others? Come on. You can see how much of a hassle it'll be if I tell them, right? Why do we have to deal with this on our day off? That's what I should be saying. They're your parents. I'm not even related by blood, so I'm the one getting dragged into this. Don't get it twisted. You really can be cold-hearted. You might say things bad about my mom, but it's not for her own leisure. Can't you understand a parent's feelings, wanting to provide for Stella? Don't you get it? If it's for Stella's sake, shouldn't they have thought about Stella's future way in advance and saved up? And Steve, he borrowed the maximum amount for his student loans because he just went along with what his parents said. Now he's struggling to pay it back. They've been on overseas trips since Steve was very young, and he doesn't even remember most of them. If they had skipped a few trips, wouldn't that have eased the loan burden? The bag mother-in-law carries is worth about $3,000. I don't like hearing bad things about my parents either. My bottled-up frustrations exploded, and I vented it all out on my husband. He'd been yelling with such intensity earlier, but now he's silently looking down. Thinking he might be angry, I took a peek, and he looked pale. "That bag costs $3,000? Really?" I silently showed him the price I found online for mother-in-law's bag. I'm not sure if mother-in-law's bag is genuine, but my husband isn't familiar with luxury brands and their counterfeits, so I kept quiet. Plus, mother-in-law always shows it off to me with pride. Even if it's a fake, she might have unknowingly paid a lot for it. What do mother-in-law and the rest plan for their retirement if they're spending lavishly but can't spare $10,000? You're right. My feelings are torn because it's my sister's wedding and I want to help as much as possible. But something's off with my mom and my dad. We're not saying anything about it. Seems strange, too. In that moment, my husband's perspective shifted completely, and he sided with me. I borrowed his phone and sent mother-in-law an email. To summarize the contents, why is it okay to make your son take on debt if you don't like borrowing from consumer finance? You called my parents cold-hearted for not giving money, but is making your son take on debt and give money kind-hearted? What do you think about not having $10,000 at your age? I understand the benefits of using the mutual aid system, but since my sister-in-law's fiancé is a public servant, shouldn't he be the one to take advantage of it? I wonder if my sister-in-law, her fiancé, and their parents even know about the situation. If they're unaware, how do they plan to recover the wedding gift money? Depending on their response, I'll reconsider my relationship with them. I sent a message articulating all these concerns in a very sarcastic tone. Back in college, I earned a master's degree in law, which seems rather useless in my daily life. But in moments like this, I feel as if I got it just to craft such messages. I showed my draft to my husband, and with his approval, sent it. In about an hour, a reply came. "You dare speak to your in-laws like that? Consider your place. Basically, it's Steve borrowing money, not your place to interfere. You've been married for about 2 years now, and it seems you can't have children. Maybe it's time for some self-reflection on your role as a wife." The condescending tone pissed me off, but there was no direct answer to my questions. Frustrated, I quickly fired back an email. "We haven't legally adopted you, so you're not my parent. Even if you were, I'd still ask what I want to know. My husband and I share our finances, so I believe I have a say in how we spend our money. And as I said, I'll leave the final decision to my husband. We're not struggling to have kids. We're both working and juggling car loans and your son's student loan repayments. So financial stability isn't easy for us right now. We've made plans, so please refrain from interfering. And I don't recall marrying you just to produce a grandchild for you." I've never spoken out against my mother-in-law like this before. I regretted the impulse email a bit, but my husband assured me, "If she says anything, I've got your back." The next email from my mother-in-law read, "You truly are a pitiful person. You think you can corner me with your pretentious behavior? How miserable. If I could turn back time to the day Steve first brought you home, I would oppose the marriage with all my might. If there's one thing I regret, it's not seeing your true nature sooner. If you ever find yourself in a tight spot, don't expect any help from me." Realizing that any reply would be met with more off-target remarks, I chose not to respond. However, my father-in-law, apparently having seen my email too, angrily called my husband. "That arrogant, uneducated little girl! She's not our daughter and we're not her parents! What was that email all about? Just because we've been polite, she thinks she can get carried away. Maybe it's because your story doesn't add up. Don't you think Mom's perspective is a bit off, Dad? I assumed your business was doing well, which is why Mom could afford all her luxuries. But now look where we are. Forget Stella's wedding costs. Shouldn't you two discuss your future plans more thoroughly? Otherwise, financial issues will just keep popping up. You're still under her influence, aren't you? Do you remember who raised you to be who you are today? Was it not me and your mother? You know, I only said it because I'm worried, right? We have our own lives to think about, and we can't always be there to help. If you're gonna act like this, Mom and Dad, we might not visit for a while." With that, he hung up with a puff. "I feel bad for dragging you into this. I never meant for you to turn against your parents like that." "No, it's okay. I grew up with them my whole life. There were things I didn't notice because I thought it was normal. It's good to have some clarity now. I'm sorry for dragging you into this mess." "It's alright, as long as you're okay." We decided there was no point in arguing anymore. The wedding was getting closer, and thinking about my sister-in-law, who had no idea and probably thought our parents would help, we decided to tell her privately. So I reached out to her to meet up. Turns out, she had no idea about any of this. I had no clue things were this way. I didn't know Mom was struggling financially. I mean, I thought she was a bit careless with money, but she works too. So I assumed she was just managing her spending money. I'm sorry to bring this up, especially with the wedding around the corner. But if you need it, we're willing to lend you the money directly. Just let us know." "No, that's too much. My husband hates debt, even the loan for the car we're using. He wanted to pay it off in full. If anything, we'll just get a loan. There's no need to borrow from you and Steve. We've had some disagreements about the wedding preparations lately, and if he found out about this, it'd just make things worse. Our budget is tight, but we'll try to make do, even if it means crafting things ourselves to save money. Well, if you need any help with things like a welcome sign or something, Steve and I can help out. Just ask." She thanked us, and despite not knowing about it before, deeply apologized for her mother's actions. It was tough to see her feel so guilty. As the wedding date neared, my mother-in-law contacted my husband. Apparently, she had said she might not attend our sister-in-law's wedding. I always wondered how my brother would explain to the relatives why she didn't attend. It would surely raise eyebrows. It's a shame because I was really looking forward to seeing my sister-in-law in her wedding dress. But I can't bring myself to apologize and go. It's just how it is. I'll ask to see the photos later on. A few months after that, we returned the $7,000 difference in wedding expenses to my mother-in-law and father-in-law. While our relationship hasn't ended completely, my husband, who often relocates for work, got assigned to a place far from his parents, so it's less likely we'll interact much anymore. On the wedding day, when my sister-in-law and her husband realized we weren't there, she confronted mother-in-law. She admitted she told us not to come. I'm not sure how the story got around, but her husband, who knew nothing about this until then, was furious. It seems he's developed quite a disdain for his in-laws. They always wanted the couple to live with them eventually. It's a sad outcome for them, but they brought it upon themselves. Looking back, maybe the reason they spent money recklessly, buying branded items and taking frequent trips abroad, was thinking they'd be supported if they lived with their son. Perhaps they borrowed money from us for the wedding expenses to keep up appearances, and told the fiancé to make sure he never found out. One day, when my husband and I were discussing this, my sister-in-law called me. "Stella? It's been a while. What's up?" "Hey, Janessa. Long time no talk. I heard from my brother about your move. I wanted to send you a little something to celebrate. Is your current address still good?" "Aw, you don't have to do that. But thank you. We're moving in a few weeks, so this address is fine. I'll email you the new one later on." "Please do. You never know when a blessing will come, but we're hoping for one soon. As a seasoned mom, you'll have to share some tips with me." Yes, we were finally expecting a baby. Absolutely. Reach out if you need anything. I will. Take care. I don't have any siblings, so having such a sweet sister-in-law makes me feel truly blessed. With one more family member on the way, I touched my belly, feeling motivated for the future.